everyone. This is Billy Ballas of Boxy Banter, and I'm live from Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I'm joined this week again by our multi-talented star athlete, star musician, Terry DeWan. Terry, welcome to the program. It's nice to have you.
Thanks for letting me come back.
Now, of course, we are in Independence Hall because we are talking about the Philadelphia Phillies today. Now, the Phillies, we'll be talking about the past 25 years in our quarter-century roster, but going back to 1883 is when the Phillies were established. They're the oldest continuous one-name, one-city franchise in American sports. Now, back when they were formed, it was common for teams to be named after the city they played in, like the New Yorkers or the Bostoners, stuff like that. So, Philadelphia, they were called the Philadelphia Philadelphians, which was a little long, so it was shortened to the Phillies. Now, they played in Veterans Stadium from 71 to 03, and then Citizens Bank Ballpark was built in 04, and the Phillies have been in Citizens Bank Ballpark since 04. In the past quarter century, they had a string of 5 division titles in a row, 07, 08, 09, 2010, and 2011. Those are their only postseason berths. They have not had any wild card berths. Of course, some of you may remember prior to this quarter century run, they were in the World Series in 93. They won the East that year. They were on the losing end of Joe Carter's walk-off series-ending home run in Game 6 of that. Now, the Phillies won the pennant in 2 of the 5 years that they've reached the postseason, as in 08 and 09, and they won the World Series championship in 08 over the Tampa Bay Rays. Their only other title was in 1980. Now, the Phillies, what dubious record are you aware of that the Phillies as an organization possess? This is not our trivia question, but just a little fact about the Phillies. Are you aware of anything, Terry?
A dubious honor?
Yeah.
Booing Santa Claus? Are we there yet? No, I off the top of my head, I can't think of it.
They have the most losses in Major League Baseball history.
The franchise has been around that long.
Yeah, I mean, they are, one of those original 8, National League teams. Mm-hmm. And they've had some success, there in the 80s with Schmidt. They won that. They had this run here, the reemergence. They had the Whiz Kid Phillies in like the 50s, I think. But yeah, a lot of down years. And yeah, most losses in Major League history. But, those Phillies fans, they are a loyal bunch, and they stick with them through thick and thin. Last week's trivia question about the Mets. Terry, do you remember the trivia question that I asked you and our listeners?
Yeah, and I got it wrong, which is a bit embarrassing. But I believe the trivia question was, in the 2000 Subway World Series, the Mets only won 1 game. Who was the winning pitcher in that game?
Mm-hmm. Do you remember who your guess was?
Yeah, my guess was Bobby Jones.
Okay, and
I was trying to be too clever.
The correct answer. Do you know the correct answer now?
Yes, I do. It's John Franco.
John Franco. So out of relief, right? And those World Series games against the Yankees, all of them were extremely close. So it does make sense that a reliever would pick up a win in that series.
Mm-hmm.
So now getting to today's question regarding the Phillies. This is also a question about relievers.
Okay.
Who is the career leader in saves for the Phillies?
Oh, wow.
So now our listeners, if you have guesses, you can send them to me on Twitter or on Instagram, on email, or on the website. We're at Boxseat Banter on both Twitter and Instagram, and the website is boxseatbanter.com. You can shoot me those guesses. on any of those sources. So Terry, do you have a guess?
I mean, I don't even know any Phillies closers other than Mitch Williams, and I don't think he was there for that long.
Wild thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't have a guess. It's got to be somebody I'm not thinking of.
Okay. All right. Well, that opens the door for our listeners for plenty of guesses out there. The Phillies, in the past quarter century, have been owned by William Giles from 1981 to 97, then David Montgomery from 97 to 2014, and John Middleton has owned the team since 2015. Now, Middleton, as you may remember, he has been, adamant about adding talent to the team. I think he used the phrase wanting to spend stupid money in the offseason, and, he did that in spending $330 million on Bryce Harper, which, after 1 year, there's still a lot of time for Harper to prove him either smart or stupid in giving out that contract. Do you think that was a good contract given out by him?
Well, I don't want to beat up Bryce Harper in two different podcasts, but no, I'm never really a fan of committing that much, 25% of your payroll to one guy, no matter how talented he is,
Yeah, although by the end of the contract, I mean, the 25, annual average value might seem pretty low.
This is true.
By the time we get, deeper into it. So
this is true.
Yeah, we'll see. Now, some of the general managers that the Phillies have had, J. Leroy Thomas was the manager from 88 to 97. He built a team that won the NL in 93. Ed Wade was the GM from 98 to 05, and he kind of drafted or acquired in various ways several of the players who would go on to have that success in the latter part of that decade and the early part of the 2010s. But, he was not around to kind of reap the benefits of that. Pat Gillick was the GM from 06 to 08. And I think he even said, though, that team that won the World Series in 08 was Ed Wade's team. Then, after winning the title in 08, Pat Gillick stepped down, and Ruben Amaro Jr. from 08 to 2015 was the general manager, and the current GM, Matthew Klentak, he's been the GM since 2015. Now, looking at some of the managers that they've had.
Can I talk about Pat Gillick really quick?
Oh, of course. Now, Pat Gillick is a legend.
I think Pat Gillick has an argument as the greatest GM in baseball history.
He was he with Toronto?
Okay, listen to it. He's with Toronto for their back-to-back.
Yeah, in the early 90s. Mm-hmm. He was did he go to Seattle?
You're jumping the bit. Then he's with the Orioles. Those Brady Anderson, Roberto Alomar, Cal Ripken Jr., Messina, right? Uh-huh. Builds that team that knocks on the door. I think they make the league championship series.
Yeah, right? I know in
97 the Indians beat them in the league championship series, right?
I remember the Orioles beat the Mariners in the first round in 97.
There you go. Then he builds the 2000 Mariners that win 100 million games.
01,
116 or whatever. Yeah, okay. And then he builds the Phillies championships.
Yeah.
No, are you kidding me?
That's quite the resume for Pat Gillick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now some of the managers that they've had. I've got some facts about the managers. I want to see if you can name the manager from the fact. So one of their managers was a College World Series champion as a player in 1980. He was the most outstanding player in that College World Series and the Golden Spikes Award winner.
1980 Golden Spikes?
Yeah. He was the Phillies manager from 97 to 2000, probably better known as a manager for...
I know. Terry Francona.
That's right. Terry Francona, Phillies manager from 97 to 2000. They had another
Arizona, right?
Huh?
Arizona?
Yes.
Yeah.
Another manager, was a Gold Glove shortstop in the big leagues, even though he never played high school baseball. He got cut from his high school baseball team, never made the high school baseball team, yet ended up being a Gold Glove shortstop in the big leagues.
I think I know this one too.
Let's hear it.
Larry Boa.
That's right. Larry Boa managed the team from 01 to 04. He got cut from his team. He played American Legion ball. He went to Sac City. He was from Sacramento. So he played at Sac City. Got his way into the starting lineup. Drew interest from scouts. There's a local Phillies scout.
Pre-Weinstein.
That went to pre-Jerry Weinstein. He had interest from scouts. So the Phillies area scout drove 90 miles to go see Larry Boa play in a doubleheader. Wow. First game of the doubleheader, Boa gets tossed. So he's like, all right, there's still another game.
That's on brand.
Still another game. Second game of the doubleheader, Boa gets tossed in the first inning.
Are you kidding me?
And so even with all of that, the Phillies did not draft him, but they offered him, they had a winter ball team in the Bay Area. They said, you go play for our winter ball team. If you behave, if you don't throw your helmet, if you do that stuff, just keep your head down, you play, then, maybe we'll give you a contract. He did. They gave him a $2,000, signed him for $2,000. He ends up making the team. And, goes on to, he was on that 1980 World Series team of the Phillies. And, he's been a coach for several years. He's managed, coached, been a bench coach, a base coach, and all that in the big leagues. Now, this next manager played professionally in Japan for about 6 years.
Are we going chronologically? That'd be Charlie Manuel.
Yeah, that's Charlie Manuel. He managed the team from 05 to 2013. He was the manager for their 08 World Series team and all those 5 division titles in a row. He is the winningest manager in Phillies history. Now we've got a guy who was a All-American quarterback in high school, actually signed to play quarterback at Washington State, but he got drafted in the first round and went the baseball route instead.
This one I don't know.
He is a Hall of Famer in baseball as a player. He was actually...
Did he play for the Phillies?
He might have had a cup of coffee. He was drafted by the Phillies and was traded along with Larry Boa to the Cubs.
Oh, Sandberg.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sandberg managed the team from 2013 to 2015.
That's right. I almost forgot that he managed. That was pretty brief, right?
Yeah. And then we have another guy who was a manager. He managed Aguilas del Zulia of the Venezuelan Winter League, and he managed them to the 1989 Caribbean Series title. Pete Mackinnon managed the Phillies from 2015 to 2017. And here's one that I know you're going to get. This guy has appeared on several fitness magazine covers.
Likes to lick ice cream and spit it out.
Yep, that would be Gabe Kapler.
Yep.
Managed for 2 years, 2018 to 2019. And their current manager, if we ever play again, which is looking like we may do that sooner rather than later, played college baseball at Northwestern, and he was the first freshman at Northwestern to be elected president of a frat.
It's Girardi, right?
Yeah, Joe Girardi.
It's a good pickup by them.
Yeah, he's had experience with managing he started with the Marlins, right? Then to the
manager
Yankees.
of the year.
Yeah. So, yeah, we will see how he does with that Phillies team and that very competitive.
He's wound tight though, man. And if it doesn't go well in Philly, and Girardi might, but I mean, I guess if he could survive New York, then right.
Yeah, I mean,
he had a nice run with the Yankees.
Didn't he win a title there?
Won a title in 09.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about 09 here shortly.
it's now time to get into the Phillies roster. Again, brief rules of the roster. You go back 25 years, so in this case we're going back to 1995. Pick one player every year, cannot repeat players. You get the player for that year, and you have to form a coherent roster. So starting at the catcher position, actually I had a couple good choices at catcher with the Phillies.
You do.
Starting off, I went with JT Realmuto from last year, 2019. So far, his only year in the organization. He was worth 4.5 wins, hit 275, 25 home runs. He was an all-star, gold glover, and silver slugger. Moving along to first base, I have to go Ryan Howard. And I got him in 06. Hit 58 home runs that year. Walked 108 times. Triple slash line of 313, 425, 659. MVP year, All-Star and Silver Slugger, and
149 RBIs for anyone who still cares about that.
Yeah, and I mean he had 182 hits, which a lot of times with the big power guys, especially walking over 100 times, you don't see 182 hits too often.
Well, think about, I guess 06 is right when the Phillies are starting to creep up and be good. 37 intentional walks. In a lineup that has Utley and Rollins, etc., but is Pat Burrell in that lineup? Like there's some guys that can play ball.
Yeah.
And he's still getting walked that many times intentionally.
He's hitting 58 bombs. I mean, I would walk him too.
Yeah, exactly.
And then at second base, I mean, there's only one choice here, and that's Chase Utley. We got him in 08. He was worth 9 wins. Second baseman, hit 33 home runs, drove in over 100. Swiped 14 bags, only got caught twice, hit 292, 380, 535. Can you guess what my favorite stat line is from his run there, though, in 08?
Well, I know you.
Yeah.
And I know Chase Utley.
Yes.
And this is how many times he got dosed.
Yep. 27 hit by pitches for Utley. He's been hit over 200 times in his career.
Wow.
Led the league that year with 27 hit by pitches. Which definitely helps out that 380 on base percentage.
Long Beach Poly guy.
Yeah. Long Beach Poly, UCLA. Scott Rowland at third base, worth 6.7 wins. Hit 31 home runs. He also drove in over 100. Great defense over there at third. He's a gold glover. And then at shortstop, we've got Jimmy Rollins, a switch hitter from 07. His MVP year, where he led the league in plate appearances, at bats, runs, 20 triples to lead the league. He was MVP, gold glover, and silver slugger. So, I mean, a pretty solid infield there. Great defense with Utley, Rowland, and Rollins. Utley did not win the gold glove, but he was worth 3.5 wins with the glove. And I know you love having your impact players closer to the ball on the infield, and the Phillies certainly did that with Howard, Utley, and Rollins on those teams.
Yeah, they were amazing, and I feel like Rollins a bit of a forgotten guy, but you gave him his just due. He was really good defensively for a big. This is something from experience. Spoken as a former third baseman that needed to be converted to first base because I just couldn't move left and right like that, and I couldn't bend down quite as much. I mean, Scott Rowland's in the 6'4", 6'5" range, right? And for him to be that good defensively is really something over there at third, where it's such a reactionary position.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I didn't remember. I associate him more with the Reds. Do you? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he had some great years for the Phillies there as well.
He had some good years with the Cardinals there at the tail end, too.
Yeah, I mean, just a great player all around. Then moving to the outfield, I wasn't able to get the same production in the outfield. In left field, I went Dominic Brown from 2013. He did hit 27 home runs. In center field, got the flying Hawaiian, Shane Victorino from 09. He swiped 25 bags that year, 13 triples, so a lot of speed from him. Then in right field, Bobby Abreu in 99. He led the league with 11 triples, hit 335. His strikeout to walk ratio was almost 1-to-1. He walked over 100 times. Great on base skills, 446 that year. And then looking at the bench, we've got Jim Tomei from 03. Hit 47 home runs to lead the league, although those came at a price. He struck out 182 times, which also led the league. Jim Tomei, do you know what record Jim Tomei holds, a career record? I just saw it on Twitter. They actually, most career walk-off home runs.
Wow.
13.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And I think one of them was with the Phillies. Then another infielder, Cesar Hernandez from 2017. Hit almost 300. He had 294 that year. Swiped 15 bags. Then in the outfield, Pat Burrell from 02. He hit 37 home runs that year. And then Odubel Herrera in 2016, worth 4.6 wins. He swiped 25 bags that year, hit 15 bombs. And then backing up at catcher, although definitely got the argument for him to be a starter in this lineup as well, Carlos Ruiz from 2012 hit 325, on base at 394, slugged 540. So, I might want to reconsider who I got in the starting lineup between him and Real Muto in this case. Chuch Ruiz, great player, don't you think?
He is, yeah. And he was brought that pitching staff along, and he's catching on the title team. But Real Muto's great too. And I'm just looking at this, and it's like, wow, yeah, Tomei's on the bench, 47 bombs. And by no means am I questioning your picks. I'm speaking more to the depth of position player talent that the Phillies had in that run.
Yeah.
Because look, most of these guys, aside from Roland, Abreu didn't make it with those teams, but you still associate him at the front end of that run. He was a great Philly for a long time with the high on base percentage there. But then a lot of these other guys are kind of stacked in those mid-aughts, and it's just mind-boggling how talented they were and how healthy they stayed and how consistent they were. They're just amazing.
Yeah, and it was, it really felt like, Utley and Rollins with Victorino and Howard kind of supporting them. But Utley and Rollins really felt like they were the spearhead of that reemergence there in the, in the latter part of the 2000s and early 2010s. And then moving along to the pitchers. Now, just like we talked about with the Braves a couple weeks ago, the Phillies had several pitchers on the same roster as well. But before we get to those years, we've got Curt Schilling from 97, ERA under 3 at 297. He went 17-11 that year. 319 strikeouts to lead the league. Also led the league in 35 games started. So a workhorse from Schilling and putting up great numbers. 11.3 strikeouts per 9. 5.5 strikeouts to walk. Then we've got Roy Halladay in 2010, a Cy Young year from him. He led the league in wins, went 21-10, 9 complete games, and 4 shutouts, which both led the league. He led the league in innings pitched at 250 2/3, and was stingy with the walk, just 1.1 walk per 9. Led the league in strikeouts per walk at 7.3. Those are video game numbers right there. 7.3 strikeouts to walk.
Yeah, well, that's something that Schilling was like that too at that time. Schilling is one of the first guys I remember having the really low walk total with the
high strikeout.
Yeah. Like I remember being like, wait, how many walks does Schilling have? And he has 300 Ks?
Yeah.
And that registering, because when I was growing up, it was like if you were 3-1 strikeout to walk, that was
Yeah.
fantastic. And then you had these guys that were blowing that out of proportion, 5-6-1.
Yeah, because a lot of times those high strikeout guys that came out of Price, you Nolan Ryan's, Randy Johnson, their walk counts were way up there. But yeah, Schilling, wow.
Pounding it. And then Holiday, too. I mean, just amazing.
Then we've got Cliff Lee from 2011. He led the league in WAR at 9 wins above replacement. Had 6 complete games, which did not lead the league, but all 6 of those complete games were shutouts, which did lead the league. He was an all-star that year. He had an ERA of 2.4. Then we've got Cole Hamels in 2014. He only went 9-9. I don't know. He must not have gotten run support there because his ERA was under 2.5, and he pitched over 200 innings. But we've learned not to look at win totals, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
And then rounding out the rotation, we've got Aaron Nola from 2018. He had a huge year, 2018, 9.7 wins above replacement. He went 17-6, ERA 2.37. He was an all-star. I think he finished 3rd in the Cy Young voting that year, behind
the 2 monsters,
behind DeGrom and Scherzer's monster years. But
all in the NL East.
Nothing, right? Nothing to be ashamed of from Nola that year. Great year from him. So,
and I don't think Nola was projected to be this high of a strikeout guy coming out of LSU. I mean, I feel like he was like a 3/4 2-seamer slider kind of slinger. And for him to get the strikeout total above 200 and more than an inning, 1 per inning is kind of impressive development from him. He's a true ace.
Yeah, although he kind of, he didn't build on those numbers last year. So we'll see, if he is able to, kind of took a step back last year, but we'll see what he does this year in this abbreviated season and going forward. But yeah, definitely a lot of talent there, and he proved it in 2018, to round out a pretty phenomenal rotation.
Pretty staff. And there was a moment where Cliff Lee was the best pitcher in baseball.
I agree.
There was a moment, right? Where he had the ball and he's going into Yankee Stadium and just cutting the Yankees up, and you're like, this guy's amazing, right?
And then moving to the bullpen, we've got Heathcliff Slocum in 95, saved 32 games. His ERA was under 3. Jose Mesa had a brief time in
Joe
Philadelphia. In 01, he had an ERA of 2.34. He saved 42 games. He was... Actually, I'll save it. I don't want to give it away as part of the trivia question.
Okay.
But Jose Mesa in 01. Ryan Madsen in 04. He was not the closer that year, but he did have an ERA 2.34. Actually won 9 games out of the pen.
Madsen was dirty. They used him in all different types of roles, all different types of setup roles, like multiple inning. He faced righties and lefties. He was good.
Yeah, 9-3 out of the pen. He was actually a low strikeout guy, only 6.4 per inning, but he got it done. He had that cutter that he threw, didn't he?
Yep.
And then Billy Wagner, we talked about him. We talked about him before. Yeah. 05, he led the league in games finished 70 games, had 38 saves, ERA of 1.5. Struck out 87 guys in 77 2/3 innings. He was an all-star that year. Now with the next guy, Robert Person, I kind of cheated in 2000. He was a starter. He's kind of had experience out of the pen a little bit. And I don't know, I couldn't really find anybody on that 2000 squad. So I put him in the pen. Then in 96, I got Ken Ryan, ERA under 2.5 across 89 innings. And finishing up with Ken Giles in 2015, ERA of 1.8. He only saved 15 games. I don't think he was a full-time closer, but he struck out 11.2 batters per 9. So what do you got on the pitching staff here?
Well,
we talked about the starters.
Yeah, monster starters. There's a little left to be desired in the bullpen there, Madsen was always great. I've already mentioned my affinity for Billy Wags. But, yeah, we're going back to Heathcliff Slocum. I mean, that's
a great name, though.
Wasn't he in the trade for Derek Lee?
Derek Lowe.
My
and
bad.
Veritek.
Yes.
From Boston to Seattle.
My bad. Yeah,
Yes.
I had Cliff Lee on my brain there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's where I remember Heathcliff. Yeah.
Now I've got some questions for you.
Sure.
On this roster. Mm-hmm. Now, Halliday's already in the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, looking at this, I think he's the only guy in so far. Now, not everyone's eligible.
Yeah.
Some guys have been eligible.
Right.
I know you, as far as Hall of Fame goes, you prefer the small Hall of Fame.
The smallest Hall of Fame in history. Yeah.
I prefer the small Hall of Fame. Baseball is a much more difficult Hall of Fame to get into than any of the other sports, and I think it's
why it has value.
They do a good job of that, and you really have to earn it to get in. That being said, there's probably some guys who are not in yet. Mm-hmm. Chase Utley, Hall of Famer or not, in your book?
Yes. Because I think if we match him up with all of the second basemen, he's gonna match up favorably. He's a centerpiece on those teams that are really good in a title team. And there was a moment where he was arguably the top position player in the game.
And when you look at those teams that those division titles, you look at who led the team in WAR, it was like him year in and year out.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So we'll see. He's not eligible yet. He just retired. I think it was after 2018. Mm-hmm. He retired. So he's not been on the ballot yet, but that's something to see going forward. Scott Rowland, Hall of Famer or not?
No. Only because now you make me think about it. Is it the combination of offense, defense? I mean, does Scott Rowland have better offensive numbers than David Wright in his career?
Well,
David Wright's not a Hall of Famer as much as he was on a track and then he got hurt.
Was on the track. I think Rowland's got more longevity.
Right, but you're talking to the guy who doesn't give credit for longevity. I'm a peak guy, so is Scott Rowland Mike Schmidt? Scott Rowland George Brett? Scott Rowland A-Rod? No, I think the answer is no to all those. So,
well, the answer is no to all those. But I mean, there
are tiers, but again. You're asking me.
This is your. I mean, I could definitely. I don't know if I would vote for him if I had a vote, but
Scott Rowland's Hall of very good.
I could definitely make the argument for him, and I'm not good. If somebody votes for him, I would not necessarily disagree with that vote.
For sure.
Jimmy Rollins,
no, but let me say that the 2007 season, what Jimmy Rollins did was amazing. Because Jimmy Rollins came out and talked smack to the Mets and said, we're going to win the East. And then when the Mets were heavily favored, and they did, and he won MVP. That's one of the all-time great, like, Muhammad Ali type.
Joe Namath.
Yeah, just like, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that because he just, he shoved it, man. And he was amazing, and he was kind of like the emotional leader and all that stuff. Again, I don't know. I'd have to look at his numbers, but off the top of my head, I just don't think that he has the.
I probably agree with that.
The longevity. That's one where he didn't stack up enough monster seasons together.
I did overlook there was another Hall of Famer in here, Jim Tomei. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty easy one. I mean, over 600 home runs.
Right.
And we mentioned, most career walk-off home runs. Don't want to picture him in those.
600 home runs.
Yeah.
Man. Jeez.
Now, Bobby Ray, Hall of Famer, no?
No, but he's like one of the more underrated players since I've been following baseball.
Yeah, I don't think he really gets his due, does he? But he's probably appreciated more now in the way that we can identify and rate players.
I think about this all the time. Well, I grew up reading, Bill James almanacs and nerding out like that. I've wanted to go back now as an adult, now that we've had this analytic and statistical revolution. I want to go back and see what I feel about these players I watched in the 80s and 90s. Now I want to go back and like study their numbers and be like, Andre Dawson, was he great, or was I kind of imagining things or adding things to it, or are they great? And like, who was a hidden gem?
Right.
Like we talk about Allarud all the time, and guys like that where they had 450 on bases, or they had a skill that we just didn't properly value at the time.
Right.
It would be really interesting to go back and come up with a team full of guys that are like looked on in a different, like, because this happens with art, right? With the, some movie beats some movie for the Oscar, and then 20 years later we look back at it and we're like, are you kidding me? Driving Miss Daisy beat Goodfellas, or whatever it is, right? I can't remember the exact examples, but there has to be that version of baseball players, and Abreu's probably one of those guys.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if you took, a GM right now with his current philosophy, and you put him in 1950 when guys are doing things differently, and if he would apply his philosophy then and find those players, those high OBP guys, those big strikeout guys, and utilize all the strategy, what would those teams look like? That's an interesting little thought experiment. But yeah, Bobby Abreu, I feel you bring up a great point. Underappreciated, and yeah, probably not a Hall of Famer, but great on base skills, great base runner too. Swiped a lot of bags. He stole 27 this year in 1999. But yeah, great base stealer. Now, Roy Halladay, we mentioned, is in the Hall of Fame. Curt Schilling, Hall of Famer.
Yes.
And
Curt Schilling's obviously talking his way out of the Hall of Fame. I think
that's probably true.
But Schilling was the horse on the 93 team, then what he did with the Red Sox, then what he did with the Diamondbacks. Yeah. Like, come on. And he has the numbers.
Look at Schilling versus Halladay. I mean, how different of pitchers are they?
Yeah.
They were both, like, Schilling struck out a lot of dudes. He didn't walk anybody.
250 innings pitched, which Halladay, you can't bring up his name without somebody talking about what a workhorse he was and what Schilling's right there.
7 complete games in 97, 2 shutouts. He's proven it in the playoffs. Like we said, he.
And look at the big years that you pulled. I have them both lined up now. I just pulled them up. So for your team, 254 innings for Schilling, 250 for Halladay. 208 hits allowed by Schilling, 231 by Halladay. And Halladay's 231 led the lead.
Yeah.
And the walks are similar, okay? Schilling has 28 more walks, but he has 100 more strikeouts on the nose. 100. So, and Schilling did this over and over again. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. Maybe he's just being slapped on the wrist here for a couple of years, and then they'll let him in later or something. But I think he's deserving.
Yeah, I think he's absolutely deserving. You're probably right. He's probably keeping himself out with his mouth and his Twitter account. Now, one more for you on the Hall of Fame or not, Billy Wags.
Yeah, I think so. Because I think if you stack Billy Wags, BB Ref up against Bruce Sutter and these dudes like that are are closers, it's like
Trevor Hoffman. I know Hoffman's got more saves, right? But
yeah, but like what I value, if we're looking at the hits, innings pitch, strikeouts to walks, strikeouts to innings pitched, all that, just the power and dominance.
Yeah,
Billy Wags is like 10 strikeouts to 9 every year of his career. It seems like. Yeah. So I think he should be in. But
so
I'm
and you're the small Hall of Fame guy, and we got a yes for Wags. We got a yes for Schilling.
Let me ask you a question. How much better is Mariano Rivera than Billy Wagner?
I mean,
if Billy Wagner played on the Yankees his entire career.
Yeah, absolutely. He's I mean, they both had long careers.
Mm-hmm.
They're fairly durable, both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So you bring up a great point. And all our listeners, if you want to chime in on the conversation, hit me up on Twitter. Again, it's @BoxSeatBanter. Let me know if you guys think these guys should be in or out of the Hall of Fame. If you want to make any corrections to my roster, if you want to submit your own, visit the website, boxseatbanter.com. You can download a template of a blank spreadsheet to create your own roster. I'd love to see any submissions out there.
Way out of the box, Hall of Fame. Okay?
Uh-huh.
Charlie Manuel.
I don't think so.
Why?
Well, I mean, I'm not looking at his page, but how long did he manage?
I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, just under 10 years with 5 consecutive division titles and a World Series championship.
Yeah, I feel like that's not long enough.
Not enough.
Yeah, and I mean, if you get 2 titles, that's
game changer, right?
That's a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you look at the managers who are in the Hall of Fame, like they've got multiple titles and long careers.
Okay, yeah, I've never really paid attention to managers, so I was just wondering, like, if this guy's the most prominent or the winningest manager of a franchise, and there are 30 franchises. I was trying to create an outside the box. I was going against the way that I usually think about this stuff. Gillick is a Hall of Famer.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt. That's a slam dunk.
Yeah.
As is always the case, can't get every player you want on the roster, or it's a tough puzzle to fit sometimes. There were some guys that I just could not get on there. Do you see any omissions on my roster looking at it? Guys who, played for the Phillies and were prominent who I might have missed out on?
Yeah, one that jumps out to me is a guy that we mentioned on a different podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Jason Worth.
Yeah.
And he was a catalyst for those Phillies teams.
He had some big years, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking like mid-30 home run, sniffing 900 OPS. He was a big player.
But I think it was just always, there was an option with Utley or Rollins or Halladay or Lee or Hamels, so we had to take over him. And it just didn't line up. Another right fielder, he's only played 1 year so far with the Phils, but you would think that 1 year would be enough, but it was not. Bryce Harper.
Yeah.
And it was basically the option between him and Realmuto last year. And I went with the catcher position.
Very good.
Another outfielder I missed on, I have to mention this guy. He is the most notorious 9th round selection in fantasy baseball history that I ever had. And that's Raul Ibanez.
Oh, I was going to say Ibanez.
He had a big year in the I want to say 08 or something. He hit over 30 home runs.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Ibanez was the first guy that I read about that was really into his diet and all of that. Because remember, he played until he was 40 or 41 years old or something.
I think, I may be mistaken on this, but I want to say Ibanez is one of the few players to hit more home runs in his 40s than in his 20s.
I love it. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Now, and then there's 2 relievers that I could not find a way to get onto this roster.
Brad Lidge?
Yeah, no Lidge. Now, he had, in 08, he was dirty, I know, in the postseason, especially closing out all those games. Then he had a year where he was, terrible.
Yeah.
But
relievers. What are you going to do?
And then another guy who is people I think love to hate him. Played for Boston. Had an altercation with Bryce Harper in Washington.
Oh, Papelbon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Papelbon was with the Phillies for a few years.
That's right. Yeah.
I couldn't get him on the roster either. It was just tough to fit those guys into the puzzle. And I don't know, is there anybody else you see who, or you don't see who you feel like should be in this roster?
No, I think he did a good job. So many of the guys are big names and pretty obvious.
Yeah. And then, but I feel like, yeah, I could have done maybe a better job, as a backup infielder or in the outfield. And like I mentioned earlier, I cheated a bit to put Person in the pen. I do have an interesting note about Person. He had, as a pitcher, he had a 2 home run game. Unfortunately, it was not in the year I got him in 2000. In 2002, he hit a first inning grand slam. This was against the Expos, I believe. First inning grand slam to make it 7-0 at that point. I think there was a 3-run home run earlier in the inning. Then with 2 guys on and 2 outs, they intentionally walked the 8-hitter to get to him. He goes grand slam. Then in the 5th inning, he goes 3-run bomb.
The intentional walk to get to the pitcher home run is one of my low-key favorite things that happen in a baseball game.
So I mean, I had to throw that out there about him. But yeah, not real confident with the pen as a whole. But yeah, like you mentioned, they had that main core there: Howard, Chooch, Rollins, Utley, Halladay, Hamels. We got all of those guys.
Just solid. Solid.
Yeah. Looking at the roster, Terry, what do you feel like some of the strengths and weaknesses of this roster are? I know some of it we touched on already throughout the podcast, but what do you got as we grade the roster here?
This roster's an A roster. Because of the star power, because of the pop in the lineup, because your top end starting pitching is Hall of Famers. It really is. I mean, the about 05, 06, because if you look at the Phillies from 03, they were winning 85 plus, and they did that all the way to 2011. Those teams were just super talented, and then when they got the pitching situated, when they had Halladay and then brought in Cliff Lee, and they were a mini dynasty.
Yeah, there's no way to argue the quality of the starting pitcher on this roster. Their ERA, when we compare them to all the other rosters I've made, I mean, overall their ERA, team ERA is 2.56. Great ERA. Their starters WAR 39.9, second only to Boston. So great starting pitching. And now when you have 25 years to pick from, you would think that you can probably get 5 great starters. Mm-hmm. But one thing that we didn't really talk about with the Braves a couple weeks ago and with this Phillies team is that you have, we had Maddox, Smoltz, and Glavine all on the same roster at the same time for the Braves. And that's like this Phillies team. You've got Halladay, Lee, and Hamels were all on that roster at the same time. And I just remember another guy we did not have on this roster that we failed to bring up. They had Oswalt for a short time.
Oh, that's right. Oh, man.
But they have, what's interesting is that they had all those guys in their prime at the same time, which is quite an accomplishment. I think we may exaggerate their achievements in terms of these rosters because they were all on the same team, whereas if you stretch it out to 25 years,
it's true.
We've got great. But that being said, they were barely second behind Boston in their starters WAR. So, yeah, their starting pitching, excellent. Pitchers had the most innings and most strikeouts. They're in the top half in ERA. But I feel like the bullpen is a weak spot of this roster.
Well, the thing is, they're up 9-3, man. So Howard has 2 jacks and Utley has a jack, and
that's true. But also, you're facing all of these lineups are pretty much all-star lineups.
This is true.
So it is tough to kind of visualize that and conceptualize it, because their batters are comparing them. They are in the top half in plate appearances and at bats, and that's a testament to what you brought up earlier. It was how they were able to stay healthy and on the field so much. They're top half in runs and hits. They're the leaders in triples, 77 triples. I mean, Rollins hitting 20 goes a long way. But their triple slash is just kind of average or below average. And yeah, you said, they do have some pop. They hit 358 home runs, this group did, which is actually slightly above average. But, that outfield, not a lot of pop there as we would like to see. Just the three outfielders I had in my starting lineup, Dom Brown hit 27, Victorino hit 10, and Abreu hit 20. Howard hit one more by himself than those three guys. So, I mean, I think, yeah, like you mentioned, those with that core infield there and that starting rotation, and the defense with Rollins, Utley, up the middle, they're extremely strong defensively with those two and Victorino.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think overall I give them like a B- because of the weaknesses in the pen and in the outfield. But, like you said, I mean, those guys, you mentioned Rollins, how he was able to kind of throw the gauntlet down and back it up. Yeah, I probably wouldn't bet against those guys in their prime.
Yeah, see, I think again, this is probably, you've talked me down to an A-, but I still feel, I think we're just going to disagree on this one because I feel like I'm so influenced, like you said, by that 5 or 6 year swing. They were so good that I was just like, look at this. This team is a monstrous team.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I give them a B-. Terry, you give them an A-.
Mm-hmm.
All you listeners out there, you can tweet me your grades, comment on my post on boxybanter.com, where you can see my whole roster, and I've got a link to a spreadsheet with all of their stats. You can check it out, and you can let me know what you think, how you would grade that roster. I look forward to getting all your feedback on everything. Terry, would you like to share your final thoughts with the Phillies roster that I have, as well as the Phillies organization as a whole in the past quarter century?
Yeah, I like your roster. Again, just have so much respect for those teams. I'm kind of that 06 through 11 range. I thought they were just dynamite, about as well constructed as they could be with the star power and home run power and big time arms and all of that. Daunting to face, and mostly the way they approached playing the game. That sounds like such a trite kind of thing to say, but they were workmanlike. They were always healthy. They were always playing hard, and they were consistent for that stretch, and that made them feel unbeatable. A funny story about Chase Utley that was making the rounds popped back up again on the internet the other day.
I love a good Chase Utley story.
Yeah, well, when Utley, I guess he's being sent down. This is before he's established himself as an everyday player. And he's packing up, and he goes to Charlie Manuel, and I can't say the quote all the way, but he goes, "You guys don't want to effing win." And Charlie Manuel said it made him rethink the decision. Like, if that guy's got fire like that, and then obviously they brought him back at some point and he's stuck. But that's a great anecdotal story about Chase Utley.
Yeah, and it is a testament to his just the kind of ball player he was. He was the kind of guy that did every little thing, just the way he run the bases. He did it 100 times out of 100 times, and it might have paid off just one time, but he did it all 100 for that one time. Now, when we look at this 25 years, they had that 5-year stretch where they were just a monster. But prior to that, and post their 93 NL pennant winning team, they were not very good. And since that 2011 team, the last year to win the division, they haven't been very good either.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's kind of impressive to put together such an impressive roster when you know they've only had that short window. Now it also goes to show you how hard it is to maintain, you know, winning. They had that stretch there with that core. They won for 5 years. Great run, 2 pennants and a World Series. I think every team would jump at that chance, you know. But, you know, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. It makes what the Braves did, winning those 14 titles, even more impressive.
It also goes to show how impressive Jimmy Rollins' boast and prediction was.
Yeah.
Because when he said that, it was like, "I'll save it. You guys are the Phillies."
Yeah.
But
he was right. They came out, they won it, they had a great run there. But since then they haven't really been able to reach that level yet. But now they've got, you know, Middleton as the owner throwing stupid money around. They got, you know, Harper. They've got Realmuto for another year. I think he's supposed to be a free agent after this year. They traded for, you know, he made trades and he's committed to winning in that very competitive NL East.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see this team going forward. But, yeah, very impressive, I think, to get such a great roster despite, you know, not having continued success throughout that last quarter century. But a very impressive peak. I know you said earlier, as far as Hall of Fame goes, you appreciate the high peak. Well, this team had a very high peak in this run here in the past 25 years.
Indeed they did.
All right, so Terry, thank you for joining me. Love your thoughts on these NL East teams. I am Billy Bowles. You can follow us on Twitter at BoxSeatBanter. We're also on Instagram at BoxSeatBanter. Make sure to follow us there. Subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. Visit the website, BoxSeatBanter.com. Leave comments for us there. Share your thoughts on this roster. If you have any questions for future teams that we will do, share those questions with us. We can get to them on the podcast. And we will enjoy going through this project with you guys. This is Billy Ballas of Box Seat Banter, signing off.